Hey there, good morning. Today we're diving into the world of Azeri cuisine with a dish that's not just popular in Azerbaijan but throughout the Caucasus and Middle Asia. They call it Beshbarmak, or five fingers, because you're meant to eat it with your hands. It's incredibly delicious, and the key ingredient here is lamb. The younger the better, and I've got the perfect one for this. Now, let's get started. I kick things off by washing the lamb's legs, a crucial part of this dish. No need for an axe to break those bones. I cut them at the joints, making it manageable. Next, it's time to get the fire going. I'm using a mid-sized stove for now, and it ignites quickly. On top of the stove, I've got a sizable basin ready. This basin has thick walls, ensuring an even distribution of heat. I place the lamb inside and cover it with spring water to get it boiling faster. The lid goes on top to seal the deal. As it bubbles away, I'm enjoying the open air, surrounded by flowers, birds singing, and buzzing bees. It's a real treat. Now that the lamb is simmering away, let's shift our focus to the vegetables. I've got some onions here. No need to peel them. I just trim off the root part. The whole onions go into the broth to add flavour and colour. I'll remove them later. Some salt and black pepper get thrown into the mix. And if you have it, some homemade smoked sausage. How much sausage is up to your personal taste, but it'll add a heavenly aroma to the dish. I give it all a good stir while the broth is cooking. It's time to create the dough for our bread. I start with flour and add eggs, creating a flat layer. Then I ladle some of the broth from the basin into the mix, stirring until I get the perfect dough. I knead it on a floured wooden surface to prevent sticking. And, when it's ready, I let it rest in a bowl covered with a plastic wrap. Meanwhile, the broth is boiling away, and I add a pinch of hot pepper to give the dish a subtle kick. Next up, I have more onions to prepare. This time I peel and cut them into rings or wheels, as you prefer. After some time, I'll make a bunch of small pitas. It's a fascinating process, actually. I roll out the dough until it's incredibly thin, like a leaf. And then I wrap it around a rolling pin. The surface gets a dusting of flour to prevent sticking. Now for a neat trick. I cut the cake along the pin, and it falls apart, forming long, thin dough sheets. that I slice into squares with a knife. Flour is everywhere, but it's necessary to handle the dough. Time flies, and I use a skimmer to remove the meat and sausage pieces from the broth. They go onto a big plate, but the basin stays on the fire. We're not finished yet. After a couple of hours of boiling, the meat is so tender that it practically falls off the bones with minimal effort. Now it's time to chop the meat into smaller pieces. And the sausage is smelling absolutely divine. I place everything on a large plate. But before moving on, it's time for a little break. Instead of tea or coffee, I'm enjoying fresh strawberries from my garden. They're incredibly sweet and tasty. Oh, and don't forget, my bees are working hard to produce some honey. Perfect. I'm a big fan of it. Piece by piece, one by one, I start adding the small pieces to the boiling broth. Stirring constantly to prevent sticking. Once they're ready, I place them on a plate and add onions and fresh garlic to the mix. Let them soak up these delicious flavours. Now that the meat and sausage have cooled a bit, I've got onions and garlic on a plate, along with pieces of pita. It's time to assemble our Beshbarmak. Grab a piece of pita and wrap it around the meat or sausage with onion. Pop it into your mouth, and you're in for a treat. Super! Enjoy your meal.
So good.